everything to pieces is when I see somebody actively write on their comment card, write on their sheet, that, oh, I wanted to do this, but I didn't have enough time, or, oh, here's a mistake, blah, 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 blah. Don't admit
don't
your
point out your
mistakes.
mistakes.
In other words,
don't make it easier.
Don't say, oh, this is what I meant.
Yeah, I find a lot of time if you end up talking about, a mistake that you made, it all of a sudden just draws a giant target to it, and that is the first thing a judge is going to look at. They're going to be like, oh, well, where did they mess up? They're directing me right to this mess up. You're not even going to look at the full thing. You're going to be like, oh, it's there. It's right there. That's where they fucked up. Otherwise, you could look through the whole thing and not even noticed it was a mistake. It might not even be a mistake to a judge, but if you say it is, that's all they'll focus on.
While I agree, and that is
a judge could have seen whatever mistake as a creative choice.
Yeah.
While I agree, and that is true, and you shouldn't ramble on or apologize about the things that you did, talking about the process and what you learned during the process is good. Saying, I messed up here and I learned this from it, shows growth in the process, and if you're going to write a write-up that includes mistakes, then that is what you should be doing with it.
Yeah.
I would agree with that, actually. I mean, that's the best way to be constructive about admitting, your own mistakes. And I think that one of the big problems with, as I believe Amy was saying before, is that when you do point out a negative and you don't follow it up with anything else, you're immediately inviting all of the judges to focus on that, because we as people, we focus on negatives because it's like the old saying says, you need two positives to outdo a negative. We focus on that, and so if there's not enough sort of balance out that equilibrium, we're essentially, shooting straight for the bullseye.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wah, wah, wah.
I gotta quit.
And I think another thing too, and I will personally direct this towards cooking entries. And actually, there are two. Well, there's several, but still, I'm going to focus on two particular, sort of entry subjects. One of them to do with cooking, and the other one to do with garbing. I'll say on the first hand that when it comes to cooking, I find one of the biggest problems is that people go for the really obvious in terms of pleasing the judges. You go to a pastry sort of thing, and everybody wants to enter something that's like loaded with chocolate and everything else that people like. And while that's great, at the same time, at least for a judge like myself, when I look at that, I'm like, it's not particularly impressive because you're essentially just using something that everybody's going to like. I'd love to see somebody enter, something in the dessert category that didn't use those sort of ingredients to, show some breadth in that particular category, or to utilize some techniques that were beyond, what we all do every day in our kitchens. Sort of same thing with garbing. You see sort of the usage of, and this is like almost a buzzword in Amtgard, which is applique French seams. Applique French seams. This is on every single garb write-up I've seen, and the problem with that is, though, it seems outwardly impressive, but at the same time, understanding the way that clothing is constructed, French seams are inappropriate for lots of different applications. And at the same time, applique, even though, outwardly as a lot, across Amtgard, people think it's very impressive, but it also comes down to how was the applique done, how clean are the outside parts of it. And then, for me, what I really look for when I look at a piece of garb is, what sort of techniques did they use that not everybody else is using? I relish looking at an entry in which somebody used hand embroidery, somebody used smocking, whether traditional or Canadian smocking. Those sort of things are not your everyday sort of techniques, and those really catch the eye.
I like to mention something with along the lines of write-ups that we were talking about. Something that drives me absolutely crazy is when people will use patterns or straight up grab like an image that somebody else has drawn and will either, trace it or what have you, and they do not give credit to the people who A, have actually made those designs, or B, has even straight up said, I did not make this pattern. This is a simplicity pattern. Or this image that I painted or wood burned or whatever, the original image was another person. I did not do this. I find more often than not that people don't understand that they have to say when they don't actually do something, because otherwise the judge is going to assume that you did. And it's honestly, it's cheating. If you are not making your own pattern and saying, I made this completely yourself, then you are saying that you have made that pattern. So please say what, the things that you actually made, and say the things that you didn't. That's just my pet peeve on that.
I would
My
agree
biggest
with
thing with entry sheets in general, and Rosalind, who I think is joining our conversation later, her and I have discussed this in a class that we taught. When, as a judge, we should have absolutely zero questions after looking at your entry sheet. We should be able to know absolutely every little thing, talk to us like we're stupid, basically, and put every little detail in there, just so that we should have no questions. There should be no reason a judge should have to go up to you and be like, one, because it's supposed to be anonymous, usually, supposed to be, but we shouldn't have to find you and be like, so, like for food entry, is there like random ingredient A in here? Like, everything should be listed. For garb, everything. We should have no question. Back to want.
Come on, guys. All right. So we've been talking about things that you do in competition that you shouldn't do. How much time do you think you guys should take before competition to plan for it?
Oh God. I would give a good long time. Like, I mean, it's hard to start working towards a competition though when you don't know the rule set, because a lot of times you very much have to gear what you're making towards that rule set, because sometimes it will be, only 3 of your things are actually going to be scored, right? If you're trying to make 7 things, and take all the time and just do the 3 things and make them just. Now, on the other hand, if it's you have to have a minimum of 7 entries to compete, and you're like, okay, cool, I'm gonna focus on these 3 things, and then you find out, a couple of weeks before the thing that you need 7 things, you've tanked yourself, Amber, yes.
No, I'm saying, yeah, that's me.
No. What do you mean I need 5 entries? Yeah. I mean, I think
that's very true, and perhaps to solve that problem, we need to change the culture so that it is commonplace to have the rule set released at least 3 months, ideally 6, before the competition is out.
You know,
we as the arts and sciences community expect that, then it will start to change. But we can't expect it in a bitchy way. We have to expect it in a enabling way. We ask politely, and that we try to encourage people who are doing arts and sciences competitions to put that information out there early, so that we have it, so that we're able to better prepare for their competition.
Yeah. Because I think the more time we have, the better stuff we produce. Oh, I'm sorry, Sandy.
I have a question.
No, you're good. You're good. I think honestly, the same way that like Warlord tournaments are changing, I think A&S competitions are changing as well. And I think there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to change that factor of like maybe 3 months in advance, just for the extra competition. But I think the way that Warlord style tournaments have started changing, I think
how do you mean how they started changing?
Competitions can't change as well.
What has changed about Warlord tournaments recently that you're saying we should incorporate into arts and sciences?
No, not incorporate, but I think the way that everything is changing and becoming different for like the fighters, I think there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to change for A&S as well, and maybe have that 3 month like advanced notice type deal. You know what I mean?
Okay, I see what you say.
So I'm inclined to believe very much in Kristen. Although, of course, I always have, but so you know, my big thing is that I think that the most important part of being you have to be a crafter before you're a competitor. You have to be dedicated to your own skills, to your own time, to your own development in whatever it is that you're doing, and so. You know, I think that when you're faced with something like, oh, I'm entering this tournament, I'm going to do this tournament, and then, you know, some lazy regent or so on and so forth decides, you know, a week before the tournament to go ahead and say, these are the rule sets, and then you're like, oh, shit, I have to have 7 entries. And I think at that point, you know, in terms of your Amtgard career as a crafter, I would say, you know, with whatever you're actually doing in terms of projects, just focus on those. Don't stress out and say, oh, well, I need to have this amount of projects, because honestly, you know, at that point, it's just not going to happen. No matter how good you are, you're going to have, you know, 3 entries that you've been working on, and then 4 shit entries that you just sort of like put out really quickly. And it's not worth it. It's not worth the, you know, integrity that you're giving to your craft to have 3 what could have been excellent entries had you been given 1 more week to being, yeah, they're pretty good, and then 4 crap entries. So essentially what I'm saying is that when you're faced with that particular, you know, problem, just go ahead and work on what you've been working on. You know, winning really isn't everything, but people appreciating and you truly, you know, being proud of the things that you've done is really what's important, especially in the context of being a crafter. And you know, because in this game, there are a lot of very shitty officers, and that's just something that we have to deal with. So you know, definitely in that case, focus on the things that you've been focusing on, and don't feel like you have to be stretched by this randomized, out-of-the-blue role set that's been thrown upon you.
While I agree with what you're saying, Jonathan, I totally operate on that in that way, that I'm always making stuff, and if I have stuff to put in the tourney, I have stuff to put in the tourney, and if I don't, I don't. Because of the style of the talk was to make yourself competitive in an arts and sciences competition, and that's where I was kind of going with it. I don't disagree with your points, but I think that a lot of people are looking for ways to be competitive because it has become so much more part of how you're recognized for awards. And knowing how to enter a tournament is much, much different than knowing how to make a thing or knowing how to enter a thing. Because the tournament itself is a whole other mind game that you have to play.
I agree with that. That's actually a good point. I sort of veered away from that. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess in terms of our actual conversation that we're having, about, entering ANS tournaments and so on and so forth, I mean, you are right about that.
That's okay. You're tangent man. I got your back.
To tag off of you guys, there is also, the other option is enter it into the next one. Like, if you find that you're working really hard and you have a couple of really solid, gorgeous pieces, and you find out, oh, you need 7 just to qualify for Dragon Master, do you know what? In a few months, there will be another one. Like, they're all the time, and there are so many different places and so many different levels too, right? Because it's not just your home group doing a thing. There's also Kingdom. There's also Interkingdom. There's Shire. There's Barony. There's Duchy. There's so many, and not only that, but the park 30 minutes down the road will also have those same tournaments, right? If you can't do it in your group at that time, there are more that you can do it in. Wait, get all the things that you need to do to have a good, solid, set that you want to enter, right? Because it's only going to hurt you if you have a couple of really nice, clean things, and then you try to just jam in a bunch of crap at the last second, right? Sure, you'll qualify, but you're presenting yourself as someone who's half-assed stuff and not have good, clean, right? You want to, especially if you're an up-and-comer and you are presenting yourself to Kingdom for the first time, for instance, right? If that's going to be the way that you're presenting yourself as a crafter. You want to show what you can do and what your standard is, right? You don't want to go in there and be like, oh, this person has a couple nice things and then just half-assed everything else. They're rushing stuff and they didn't give themselves enough time and this and that. So if you really are doing it to show who you are as a crafter, then make sure that the set you're entering reflects that.
Absolutely. I am so with Anne about this. Don't enter something that you're not proud of. If you are working on a thing and it's not done, don't put that in. Don't enter it and then be mad at yourself about the score you got. If it's not commiserate with how your skill level is right now, don't put that in the tournament. You can do it again. You have all the time in the world. You are in no rush.
So we've kind of danced around a topic that comes up in ANS communities a lot, which is gaming the system when a rule set comes out. Sometimes that's a reason for organizers to release a rule set later, because with 3 weeks they can do less gaming of the system than they can in 6 months. But all the standard rule sets seem to have a standard way of manipulating them, and I think there are a bunch of people in this panel who know what to look for in manipulating a rule set.
Actually, I have a question, because I've heard this term a couple times, but what exactly is that? Like, what is it?
Game. Yeah, when I'm referring to gaming the system, I'm talking about, let's see, so you have a 20 category system or something like that that has that's placed, and everything's determined by points. So first place at a category gets 5 points, and so on and so forth for every category. And the obvious way to game that system is to enter substandard or okay items in the less entered categories, and
In the
spam
Tri-Kingdom area,
categories
these
to
are
get
called
points.
flood tourneys because you just flood the thing and everybody knows it.
Yes.
Some systems are much more vulnerable to gaming than others, and placing systems or systems where you only have the top 3 items, average, and those are your scores, are much more difficult to game and are therefore, yes, Ethan, are much better tournaments. And you really don't want to encourage people to run tournaments that can be flooded or can be gamed. If it's a system that can be gamed easily, you shouldn't have it as a tourney.
And I would venture to guess that a lot of that is a lot of the reason why we do an Amtgard standard ANS rule set, the way we kind of are working toward an Amtgard standard war skills rule set, because war skills they've found what works, what's fair for everybody at every level. ANS doesn't seem to have that yet. We're still working out a lot of kinks. It seems nobody's found the holy grail of a system yet.
The one thing that I liked in a couple of tournaments that I've been in was when they would have it be that you had to have like 7 or over to have that entry count towards it, right? So that way, if you are flooding, they're not going to count, right? So that way you have to have quality pieces to keep going. I mean, now
I want to point out really quick for the people not in Golden Vale.
Yeah.
Golden Vale does a 1 to 10 scale, not a 1 to 5 scale.
Which is weird.
Right.
You're
That's
weird.
probably important to know. Yes.
Weird.
That is, by the way, not how anybody else in the whole world does it, so it's super confusing.
It
One of my
is.
suppliers is from
Weird
Golden
how
Vale, and he
whenever
said, I got an
you-
8 on this, and I was so upset. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? We only go to 5. Did you turn it up to 11 also? Nice.
Really, I think it's just because we like seeing 10s on things. Not that 10s happen,
Ever.
but, ever. But it's a nice thought.
Someday, maybe.
Keep elevating it, just like 100 points. You have 100%. Good job.
So,
Can we just
can
have,
anybody
like, A
else
pluses
mention
on
a
game
system they've
feedback?
encountered and how they gamed it?
I personally have never gamed a system because thankfully I've never actually taken part of a system in which that was actually allowed. In terms of judging, though, I have been a part of systems where I'm like, this is kind of fucked. And, it is it's a problem to me. I'm very uncomfortable with many tournaments that I've been a part of where the rule set really, favors anybody who can just sort of, punch out a bunch of, mediocre entries and just sort of win because they have a ton of entries. And that's great. It's good for you. You can, shell out a crap ton of things. That's great. In terms of, actually looking at them and appreciating their quality and really seeing good craftsmanship, it's terrible, and it's definitely something that I'm certainly not a fan of. I personally favor a system that's based on, essentially you have a certain number of entries, there is a cutoff area, and anything that you get below that counts automatically as a 0 towards your actual average. So there's an incentive, essentially, when you're entering the tournament to either bring your best or don't bring anything at all. And I like that a lot. That's how I've run Dragon Masters, and most recently our Iron Griffin tourney here in GV. And, I like that model because it definitely does encourage crafters to bring their A game or to hold off Maybe wait till the next one and improve on what they've already done. Next.
Okay, well, I mean, we've kind of covered some of the good and some of the bad, I guess. So I think maybe next move on to the things that people are doing that they don't know they're doing that are tanking their scores.
I would
Why
say
you're screwing up.
presentation is a big one.
What was that?
Presentation.
Oh, yeah.
Presentation, yes.
Like, I have found so many times where somebody will have a really nice garb piece, and it will be wrinkled and dirty, and it will be in a pile on the table.
I find that
As
with
a
weapons
judge,
too, though.
you just
People
go,
enter a sword and it's used and dirty.
yes.
So when we're talking about someone winning or losing, we're usually talking about tenths to hundredths of a point, and that tenth or hundredth of a point is going to come from something like you not having stains on your garb that you entered, or you making sure that those strings that you pulled out that loosened your hem got sewn the crap back in.
Clipping your threads, things like
Yeah.
that.
At the level of winning Dragon Master versus being second place,
yeah,
that super matters.
If you're really wanting to start entering competitively, in general, no matter what category you're entering in, you need to look at those little details.
Yeah, I mean, like, also, like, take a 2D art, for instance, right? Like a drawing. A lot of people will have, like, torn out of a notebook and thrown on the table. I've seen it where people have actually, like, placed it on a table where there was, like, water and just there's, like, a giant watermark busting through their art, and it's just like, present your stuff. Like, for anything like a drawing or something like that, I would say put it in a frame. Put it in a frame and have it propped up, right? Like,
can we
just
say it's like an okay frame?
Crazy.
I've seen bejeweled frames. I don't want to judge your, like, really beautiful art in a bejeweled frame. Can we stop that, please?
Well, yeah, because it actually, like, it undoes your art, because your art should be the central focus point. If you've got it on the wall and you're distracted by all of the pretty sequins and shit that's going on the outside, it makes no sense. Especially if the viewer finds the outside of your frame more interesting than what you're looking at.
Oh, absolutely.
That's a bad sign.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like, present it in an appropriate manner, right? If you've got this crazy ornate frame and you don't have a very detailed image that you're framing, you're being counterproductive at that point, right? Nice, simple, plain black frame will do wonders. Make it appropriate. Make it, don't have it be a color that clashes or a color that's just outrageous, right? Highlighter yellow, maybe not the best choice. Tie-dyed, I mean, now, if you're doing a scroll of which is for an individual named tie-dyed, and it's all tie-dyed, maybe that's a little different, but 20 fingers. Anyways, but yeah, so do something that will complement your piece, not detract from it.
Now, I would like to point out that there are cheap ways to do good presentation, because Amtgard is technically a free-to-play game, and
dollar store frames.
The cost is always
$1.
Yes, free to play, not free to win.
But dollar store exists, people, and it does okay sometimes.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be an outstanding
up here, so it's a little different. But like, I found these really nice big black frames for like $3 each, and they were like really nice. But it was a dollarama. You didn't need a $20 frame from Michael's or a $40 frame. Like, there are places that you can get it for cheap, and yeah, like, I mean, yard sales, right? Like, it's, you don't always have to think, oh my God, it's impossible, I can't do it, right? Look at the dollar store. Look at Dollarama if you're in Canada, I guess. Look at thrift stores. Look at, yard sales. Also, if you're getting something from a craft store, look for coupons. Go on weekends that there are. If you know there's a tournament coming up in like a week, there's going to be a 50% off sale on frames. Jump on that. Definitely look for.
But even beyond price, though, like, you can find pretty much anything at a good price.
Yes.
So I'd like to sort of piggyback off of Amy for a moment, because she sort of, I don't know, like, being from Texas and being from a very, very redneck family, I have very much learned how to essentially redneck it in terms of getting things done. I personally believe that you do not have to go out and buy an expensive tool for something, when if you really get creative about it, you can make stuff on your own. There are so many very specific tools that you can go and pay, $20 to $100 to several $100s on, that if you really get creative about it, you can just reproduce in your own home. And that's actually something that I'm really impressed by, is when people will do so and then actually add it to their write-ups when they say, this is, how I did it, and oh, by the way, I made the tool for it, or I, worked the process. I've judged a attorney where somebody did some garb and they made some trim and they made their own heddle loom, the rigid heddle loom to make the actual fabric. And the fact that they actually made the tool to go on, to do it, instead of, spending $400 or $500, from some nice loom from, like, New Zealand or the UK, was, to me, almost as impressive as the actual weaving itself. So I think, and I actively encourage people to try as best as they can to actually, do most of the process as they can, all the way from the actual, base of the crafting itself. That's what I, absolutely look for in terms of the very, very high quality, stuff that we end up judging at, whatever level of crafting tourney.
Now, you're calling it rednecky, but I know that, like, in Tal de Gore, someone just entered a, like, hobo stove, and there's some, like, serious science that goes into some of this stuff. Like, so, yeah, I'm 100% with you, Nexus.
Nexus, I actually I had somebody ask a question in regard to that. It said, because of your feelings on that, do you feel that not making your own tools detracts in any way?
I don't, because at the nature of our game, it is such that it's great to see entries that are in that particular period that give a lot of emphasis towards our game, and I think that's great. But I personally don't see anything negative from using tools or any other sort of technique that it's modern. But when I see people go above and beyond in terms of the process, whatever it happens to be, from making your own pigment to weaving your own cloth, that sort of stuff is definitely an extra for me. because it so closely sort of meshes with the at least the historical aspect of our game, however broad that may be. But for me, I think that that's definitely an extra dimension to entering into a ANS thing. I would also very much love to know what Linden is going to say, because I know she wants to say something. But I can't hear her.
But I can't hear her.
Is your mic on?
Did the Twinkies break things?
I don't know.
Oh, I want a Twinkie.
Oh, next, you're like my favorite fat kid.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can. All right, so repeat whatever you said after I stopped talking.
It says that my microphone is muted now, so that's hilarious. I don't think you should encourage sheep to shawl. I think that puts a lot of pressure on people that otherwise have one skill. For instance, making we have this sense in Amtgard that you have to start from the beginning and go to the end. And that's not how it would have been done in period. One person would have made the buttons, one person would have made the thread, one person would have made the cloth, one person would have cut the outfit, one person would have sewn it, somebody else would have embroidered it. Having all these skills is great, but making people feel like they must master every level of the process is so much pressure. For instance, I don't know how to make rabbit glue, but I do know how to bind books. Did I make the glue to bind the book? No, because I don't have a place to do that, and I certainly don't want my children to get into it. Grinding your own pigments is fantastic if you have the ability to do that and the skill. Now, I enter a lot of stuff in SCA nowadays, and they ask you to say what would have been done in period and what you did and why you did it differently. Was it a safety issue? Was it a cost issue? Why did you do it differently? Now, having that kind of explanation on a write-up might be useful instead of making people feel like they must produce their own tools. Now, I agree that it is a bonus, but I don't think you should make people feel like they have to. I don't think that it should be something that you must do in order to ascend to the higher level of arts and sciences, because we have an emphasis on excellence in skill. And you don't have to know how to do every single thing to be great at a couple things.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that was actually
Yay, baby.
My actual intention is to say is that it's not a bad thing to not know how to, sort of do everything, but it's certainly a bonus when you can throw out a lot of extra, sort of skills.
Okay, then I agree with you. I just don't want people to feel like they have to make their own damn paintbrushes. I had somebody ask me if I made my own, and then they gave me a face because I didn't. Yeah. Of course I don't make my own paintbrushes. I don't know how to catch squirrels. Do you?
on that subject too, I want to throw out there, specialization is not a bad thing. I think there's very much a culture among the ANS community in a lot of places that specialization can be a bad thing, and you should be able to diversify and do 15 million things. It's okay if you're really great at one thing.
But you need to be actually great at that one thing and not just turning out a lot of the same stuff at that one thing.
Oh, so...
Don't be that female guy.
So, not this last time that I went to the EH, but a time before, I got to actually sit in at the night circle and sort of listen to people talk about, different candidates and so on and so forth. And there was something that I noticed that was actually very, very different from the culture there. Which, why wouldn't it be? Because it's Texas versus, New Hampshire. But still, what I noticed is that here in GV, we have a lot of emphasis on people having this very broad sort of education of crafts. And I always remember, and of course was reminded of when I visited the H, is that You know, these people were really looking at a candidate in terms of their focus and their mastery in the area that they were interested in. So I think that that's certainly a very kingdom-specific, regionally and culturally sort of connected thing. I personally believe that, people don't have to have the skill set in like wood carving and leatherworking and garbing and writing and singing and so on and so forth. That's not really big, and it's also an unrealistic expectation of people. Um, for a hobby such as ours, I'm really interested in people pursuing the things that actually draw them towards our game. And so I think it's really wonderful when we can come across somebody who has a great amount of dedication to their skill and can really show mastery in that subject.
I would like to piggyback off of that. Do I completely agree master-wise? When it does come to competitive Dragon Master tournaments, you do want to be able to be good at variety. Because a lot of times,
with that, yeah.
Because a lot of times, rule sets will have it to be like, you can enter one thing into this thing, right? Into this category or this type. Where if you are the best leather crafter in the world and you can only enter one thing of leathercraft, you've got, like 9 other categories that there are now open and you can only enter your one specific thing. It's going to hurt your score. But let's say you have 3 things. Sorry, yes?
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No.
In Golden Vale, is it possible to become a knight without having won tournaments? Or is that chiefly where the awards come from? Do you have to win tournaments in order to ascend?
I can think of a couple who were close enough without actually winning any tournaments.
I wouldn't say that you necessarily have to, but I would say that your work has to be very prevalent and very visible to people. If you're not entering tournaments, you have to be putting it out there in some other way.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also think it depends on the group in Golden Vale, because there have been times where like something didn't get awarded because you weren't number 1 for that category. So I think in Golden Vale it depends on the group that you're at.
Okay.
Like I find more of, it's not about winning the tournament so much as being in it. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, only really my own personal experience, but like I grew up in a group that was 8 hours away from Kingdom, and at the time a lot of people in Golden Vale weren't traveling, so it was a huge thing to where if you were an up and coming crafter and you wanted to throw your name out there and show the work that you can do and you had to visit Kingdom and you had to enter Dragon Master. Like that was the way that you showed that you existed, and not only that, but what you can put forth as an artisan and what your skills are and what you can do. Otherwise, you're some random Joe Schmo and 8 hours away. They're not gonna look for you. You have to show yourself. I think it doesn't hurt to win tournaments. Certainly not. And I think if you're up there, I think it's more important to enter things of quality than to win. I think it's more than anything just a good place to showcase what you can do.
Can I bring this back really quick, because this is supposed to be a how to enter things competitively. I just want to remind people, we're talking about things that at a very high level, but just starting out, don't be discouraged by low scores and don't be discouraged at what we're talking about to want to enter things. Like, every single one of us has stumbled along the way.
Oh, God, yes.
So don't get discouraged by what we're talking about at all.
Actually, yeah, Sandy, what a fantastic thing. I'm really only thinking Kingdom up here, and it's absolutely correct. Like, there are going to be people that are going to watch this, and you're going to be entering Shire level tournaments. You do not have to be at this level. You don't have to be thinking, oh, I need to do this. I need to win this to be a knight someday. Like, it's
But I think even at Kingdom level, don't be discouraged to enter things at Kingdom level, but don't maybe always expect to get that like really, really high score or something, but don't be like discouraged to enter further tournaments,
So when you enter something, you're going to get a score. That score may have little or nothing to do with the thing you entered. So when you enter something, realize that you are showing against a whole bunch of other people that have different skills than you are and at different levels than you are. And that what score you got actually has little to no bearing on whether or not you'll be awarded or recognized for that item.
Yes, absolutely.
That's just how it is in a tournament. And you can't. I have never in my life gotten over a 4.0 on anything, ever. I placed second in one tournament, ever. I've never won a tournament, not anywhere in the world. Don't be discouraged. Enter often. As you get higher in levels, you will change your tactics, and that's good. But don't ever be ashamed of the art you produce. Every day, just make art.
Yes.
I think that is, and I just put my headphones back on, but that was a beautiful perspective on what it really means to be a crafts person. Not just within Amtgard, but just in general. Whether we're not a competitive person or whether we are a competitive person, the thing comes down to, if you are somebody who makes things, the most important thing straight off the bat is, do you enjoy what you're doing? And are you happy with the things that you do? Because at the end of the day, that's what really matters, and that's what helps us advance as makers of things. If we're not happy with the things that we produce, then we know what we've done wrong, and we know how to improve it. And we get up to the level that we personally feel is where we need to be. So, the tournament system is an interesting thing, because there very much are people out there who enter just because they very much want to win. But you can always tell when there's a true, very sincere crafter who enters, because there's something inherently special about the entries that they put in. You can very much tell that they respect the things that they've done, and at the same time they very much want to get better at it. And that's what it means to be a crafter or an artist in general, is that, are you challenging yourself? Do you feel good about yourself and the things that you make? And then, you can take that, and there are a lot of people, a lot of judges who will say positive things or negative things, so on and so forth. But Kristen's definitely right about that. It's not really that important at the end of the day. If you truly are an artist, a crafter, it's about how you are fulfilling yourself.
I cannot agree more. And also keep in mind that there's going to be times where you're going to enter things, and your judges may know nothing about the thing that you're doing, and they might give you some god-awful scores or some really horrible comments. And you know what? That is not what you should measure yourself as or your art. At the end of the day, it's just a number on a piece of paper. You should be proud of yourself for making the thing that you did and having the courage to present it in front of, you know, others. That should be so important that you should not look down on yourself if you get a bad score. You know, if there's certain things, you know, you can take away from, you know, also, you know, if you're getting a critique, don't take it to heart. Try to see, you know, what you can improve on, but don't take it as what you made is crap and you are a crappy artist, right? You know, sometimes you're going to get comments that won't make any sense, and it'll be coming from somebody that doesn't know any better, and that's going to happen. Don't sweat it.
I want to piggyback off that with having, like, judges comment on things and they have no clue what they're saying, so that's going to happen. But social media is an amazing thing, as we are proving right now. There is this awesome Facebook group called ANS Anonymous, and there are plenty of crafters there that do know what the hell they're talking about on some things. Post pictures, get opinions. It's probably going to make you feel better about your work than whatever random thing, like, Joe Schmo judge said.
So, I just want to point out really quickly, because you reminded me of something, Sandra, is that I think that it's really important. I mean, because we are all human, it's impossible for us to have complete fluency in all of the different types of, you know, craftsmanship that's out there that can possibly be presented in a tourney. And I think that it's important, at least in terms of entering things, is that if you personally feel like the judges there will not have, you know, any knowledge whatsoever of this sort of like tiny little niche of crafting, or this tiny little niche of technique that you've chosen, to provide a lot of background information on that. I will cite recently the Iron Griffin tourney that we had at Fury of the Northlands, in which we had an entrant who provided a huge amount of detail on a vintner that this entrant had entered, and it was really great. The citations for it really provided us with a huge amount of background, and in terms of what we should expect. And then, of course, also, you know, at least if you're on a site where it's particularly available, you know, if you have your phone, Google is your best friend. Absolutely. Because you can find anything there. You can find, you know, all of the terms. You can find all of the things that you would look for, and so on and so forth. So even if you're relatively, you know, versed in a particular craft, you can at least check up on the basics of it. But you know, going back to the original point is, I think that it is really great when, as an entrant, you know, you can sort of look at it and be like, can I really expect, you know, a reasonable, regular Amtgard judge to really understand what it is that I'm talking about, and provide as much information as you can, even if it means, you know, giving a separate document altogether, I think is a great strategy. Also, that baby is so cute.
I want to say also on the other respect, remember that your judges are volunteers, that they are putting their time, like they will spend like 4 hours or more judging your entries. They have to read so many things, they have to look at so many things, and it's not their job. They are not getting paid for this. They are offering their time. They are not participating in the event that you're at. You're not doing their battle games or anything else. They're sitting there judging your things. Yeah, you cannot expect them to know every single craft there is with every category. You're going to have some people who are experts in this and this. Then you're going to have people that are experts in this and this. But this person has maybe never even heard of the craft that you're doing. You can't realistically expect them to know everything there is about every art form ever. I mean, more often than not, judges are very knowledgeable, and there are certain things like the way you present things that are universal, where if you have a dirty clump of garb just sitting on the table, your judge will most likely know that that is not the best way that you should be presenting, right? Opposed to, details on certain types of embroidery or something that's more specific. But just please remember that they are volunteers, and yeah, someone might give you a crappy score, might give you a crappy comment, but they're trying their best, and they're doing this as a service to you. So don't be too much hating on them.
Yeah, be nice. You're a judge. You've been a judge. We've all been judges. Don't be that guy that hates on judges for giving their time. They're going to make wrong calls. We've all made wrong calls.
Yep.
Just know that they are giving their time, and they are doing their best without malice to give you the best feedback that they can. And maybe they're having an off day. Whatever. They're still doing a job that nobody else is doing, and we should thank them for it. And it should not be a thing where it is expected that they show up and do it. I cannot tell you how many times I have showed up at an event 20 hours from where I live and been expected to judge the thing without being asked ahead of time. And you do it anyway because you know that those people need you. And that's what we all do. So remember as you go through that I'm just repeating what Anne said. I don't know why I'm preaching to the choir. Sorry.
More power to you.
Okay, yeah. To kind of build off what Petra just said in the comments there, we've kind of moved away, I think, a little bit from how best to be competitive. So I think we'll kind of maybe everybody go through and give one last, your absolute number one best thing to make you stand out in a competition, and then maybe we'll move into the question and answer from the questions that people asked ahead of time. Nexus, you want to start? Again, since you're on the left?
Okay. I don't know why I'm in your immediate left, but okay.
I don't know, but you are.
I'm a visiting dignitary, apparently. I think that my I guess number one strategy in terms of being a competitive force is looking for things that I know nobody else is going to do. Looking for techniques that nobody else is going to do, and build off of that. I want personally my judges to be, unexpecting of what it is that I put in. Yeah. And I think at the same time, I also want to try to, at least to the best of my ability, because of course, this is very difficult when you enter things to have any semblance of anonymity. to enter something where people don't look at it and readily assume that it's something that I made. Which is nearly impossible, but at least I try to do it.
Yeah, if it has a bird on it, it probably belongs to that guy.
Yeah.
Fucking Nexus.
Okay, Kate?
We can't hear you, Kate.
Mic's off.
So for me, it boils down to you can win with the proper amount of respect. You respect your materials, you respect your methods, you respect your judges. If you're using the proper materials and you're using the proper methods, and you are not taking your judges and their skills for granted or ignoring the fact that they have them, then you're gonna get those last couple tenths of a point that you need to be competitive over someone that you might not otherwise be able to beat.
Okay. Kelly? You're sort of on the panel by proxy now, so
no,
throw yours in?
I don't have anything to say.
I'll be quiet. You make stuff.
No, I'm making. You know.
You're making stuff right now, you liar.
You dirty rat.
This is. I gotta go.
Okay. Kristen?
What?
Kristen?
Sandra
Kelly doesn't want to talk, so.
Ahead of me already. I think the way you improve your ability in tourneys is by improving your skills other places. Seek out other crafters that either do what you do or do crafts adjacent or do crafts at all. Form a good support network and encourage each other. And by creating for yourself more competition and encouraging others around you to grow their skill and become better, you give yourself a better playing field to fight against, and you give the entire group that you're in a much better arts and sciences community. You want to act by compersion, not by jealousy. You want to encourage others to do well. You don't want to hide your secrets or your skills or... Sorry, baby. Let's talk to you.
Hey, we had some serious feedback, too. It's okay.
So you always want to encourage others, and you want to share your skills and abilities, and you do not want to hide those abilities. I remember there being some stuff in the early 90s where people would be like, no, it's my secret, and I will not tell anyone until I'm finished winning the world. How the hell is anyone else going to compete with you on an even playing field if they don't know how to do what you do? Share that information. You can't win if they don't have all the tools you do in their toolbox.
That's awesome.
Okay. Sandy?
First, Kristen, you made me miss my baby. But the big thing really is going to be pay attention to details, trim your threads, pay attention to presentation. All those little details and improving on those little details are going to make you a better crafter, but also get you those extra points.
Okay. Amy?
Done.
I would say push the envelope.
That's right.
What the baby said.
Yeah!
Never stop pushing yourself. See how big you can go. See what new things you can do. Always try to be improving yourself from the last thing you did. When you are in a tournament, make a statement. Have your pieces be the first thing that people look at when they walk into that tent or the table or whatever, right? Have it stand out. Have it, be that showstopper showcase that you can't help but look at. Have, your presentation be clean. Draw attention to your section. Like, for instance, I always put like a velvet tablecloth down on the section I'm claiming on this table, and all of my things are on this. I'm showing that this is my stuff, right? Versus somebody that might have something just sitting on the ground. You know, show your entries respect. Present them. Also do things that other people haven't done before. Try to reinvent your craft. Try to, you know, do things that are original. And more than anything, have fun with it. Enjoy what you're doing. If you are miserable and you're competing, you're not doing it right. Do what makes you happy. If you find it fun and exhilarating, fantastic. But if it gets to a point to where you're anxious and you're depressed and it's just eating away at you, take a step back. It's not worth it. Also, compete against yourself. Don't try to go in there and thinking, I gotta beat that person, I gotta beat that person. Try to just compete for yourself. Try to beat the last thing you did. Go in and just try to be better than your former self. Because trying to be number one all the time will eat at you. And there's going to be somebody that is a master at this, and a master of that, and a master of this. And you don't need to be the one that takes the world always. It's okay if you are not number one in every single thing. Do your thing. That's the only thing that matters is do right by you and have fun. That's pretty much it.
Okay, so I did get a couple of questions from people ahead of time who weren't able to come and sit in on the class that did want to ask questions. First one on the list was somebody asked about presentation on a budget, specifically as pertains to things like garb and not being able to cart around dress forms or, you know.
I think that we touched on that earlier, though, that there's the dollar store for frames, a hang, pretty stinking cheap, but I think we touched on the low-cost presentation earlier.
Well, particularly for garb, you can just hang a string from poles that are already at the venue and hang it from a hanger there. Or you can present it on a person if they allow that in the tournament, and you should definitely ask your judges before you do that.
I would also say that if you're presenting garb and you don't have, say, you know, a hanger or a dress form and so on and so forth, that given the actual space, in terms of presentation stuff, just lay it out in full as your garb. Just make sure to do it early so that nobody can come along and say, oh, I'm just going to sort of, you know, move this out of the way so I can put my thing there. You know, actually, that's a whole sort of other concept in terms of, you know, entering a competition is, you know, getting your stuff set up early to sort of utilize as much space and presentation area as you can. Because, of course, you know, sometimes space is a big thing.
Next, I noticed you guys talking about this as if you set all of your items together regardless of category. Is that how it happens in Golden Vale?
This particular way, as much as I do not like it, it is a fairly common occurrence.
Terrible.
Yeah, it is.
It's usually pretty mishmashed, yeah.
Actually, yeah, no. The thing about, I don't think I've ever seen a GV tourney where things were separated by category.
Yeah, I haven't seen that either.
That leads to bias to the entrant or against the entrant, and it's a complete mishmash. You're likely to miss like articles as you're doing. Why don't you guys separate by cat? You should separate by category. That's important.
I agree.
It's a good thing.
Next question, Amber.
Okay. Next question. One of the questions was write-ups, but we've covered that and covered that and covered that. Next question was, why do people never enter recitation as a bardic category? Somebody legitimately.
Never say never, because people do it all the fucking time.
Wait, what?
All of that.
Can we
Recitation.
repeat that question?
What?
Can we repeat that question just really quickly? Because I think I misheard it.
Yep. The question was Jeff Cabrera's, actually, and he wanted to know why he never sees people doing recitations as bardic entries. Is there some kind of bias against them? He said he sees people do them
every moment I do.
So,
Jeffrey, you know this.
so, okay. It's a valid question. It really is. But I want to go ahead and say, though, that it actually has a lot to do with the bardic category completely. So, recitation, I would certainly love to see a lot more of it. But at the same time, you know, the bardic category is very underutilized. Is mostly completely full of song, and as much as I hate to say it, it's full of a lot of very poor song. I mean, I hate to say that, but it's very true. And, I would love to see a lot more recitation, but I think at the same time, just as everyone's not a singer, not everyone is an actor. And, I think from a lot of people's perspective, they have this feeling as, I can't recite anything because I'm not an actor, but at the same time, being an actor has this sort of, underlying pressure of, it's not good enough to recite something, you have to recite it really, really well. And, actually at the same time, it has a lot of, similarities with any other type of bardic, and I think that's one of the reasons why we don't see a huge amount of bardic entries versus all of the other types of crafts that we see at a tournament. There's an interesting quality about bardic, and I am personally of the opinion that there's really not such a thing as talent. It really has to do a lot with passion. But at the same time, when it comes to things like that, I think that there's definitely a leg up in that area. Really, a lot of people can learn how to sing, and they can learn how to act. But there's another quality that goes behind that has to drive that person in that direction. So I think in terms of recitation, it really comes down to there needs to be several folks in that area that are dedicated to that craft to enter, and I think that we really need to see, not only in Golden Vale, but across Amtgard, people who are willing to actually hold workshops and classes to teach people not only how to be confident, but how to approach a character, how to become someone else besides themselves. That's a wonderful, crafting ability about it that is underutilized and not understood. And it would go a long way towards, developing that, crafting area. In very much the same way that writing, that category is much maligned by judges and not something that we have a huge amount of focus on. And it would be really great if we had more people who are comfortable in that area to come out and say, I'm willing to work with you, do a workshop, do a class, to help promote that category.
I think that with Bardic in general, yes, singing is obvious and instrumental. They're going to be the most entered of the Bardic category, but I've seen, there's a girl in Rising Winds, Jessie, who is adorable and wonderful, and she's entered a mime piece before. There's so much that you can do. Just, if you want to see more recitation, be that guy and enter a recitation.
I like to piggy off the back of this stuff. Bardic is actually one of my main things that I do. It's probably my specialty, if anything. There are a lot of us that do it, and I would love to teach any part of Bardic. Instrumental, vocal, acting. Seriously, if anyone ever wants to do any of this, look me up. I will tutor you one-on-one. I want more than anything for Bardic to be more appreciated, more done, and more understood also. I find a lot of times people don't understand what goes into certain things, and sometimes it's a lot harder than it seems. Sometimes it's a lot easier than you think. On that also, time, and I would love to see more of, particularly for those of us that actually do recitation and the lot. Dress as your character. If you are a character, look like them. I cannot tell you how many times I have seen people do Bardics in a t-shirt and jeans. It breaks the illusion completely. But more than anything, it is the skin of your character. When you are dressed like a character, it is a million times easier to portray the character. It is the best way to stay in character and to better understand who that is. And on to that also, if you're doing something from a show, know the show. If you are doing something that has a backstory, know the backstory. If there's a particular character that has a certain way that they walk, certain way that they talk, do it. I see a lot of times people will start doing a Shakespeare piece and have never seen the show. They don't know the context of what they're doing. They don't know what they're saying either. So they're stopping in wrong places, breathing in wrong places, and they'll present it in a way that doesn't make sense to the show. That is one of the big things that you will get nailed on score-wise. If you don't understand your piece, then it's going to hurt you. I guess that's pretty much it. I'm kind of rambling at this point, but do more Bardics.
I would definitely agree with that, Amy. Like, for me, when acting in general is a very complicated sort of subject because there's so many different ways to support it, so many different ways to interpret it, and I think that a very big thing with at least with me, and actually what I was typing in the group chat is that you don't have to be a great singer. You don't have to be a great actor. That's one part of the equation, but the other part is how you present it. And you may do a substandard job of actually the recitation of being Lady Macbeth. But if you do so in the right presentation, it can still be just as effective. And you know, the other thing that I have to I guess add to that is that, you know, if you get into a situation in which you have completely blanked out from your character, because it happens. I've seen many situations in which you have somebody who's doing a recitation or doing a bardic of any other type. They get into this state in which sometimes they forget their lines, they forget the lyrics, they forget the particular tune of something, and that's what breaks them. Because a lot of times people don't know how to deal with that, and so they get to a point where, oh, I forgot. And believe me, this happened to me before, and it was crushing and terrible, but I learned from it. You know, I was doing a recitation of a poem. It was, you know, totally on point, and then all of a sudden I totally forgot, you know, the next lines. And instead of doing what I should have done, in either making that pause a dramatic pause or turning it into some other sort of impromptu line, I immediately said, "Oh, I'm sorry. 1 second, I forgot." Instead of using that opportunity to make it into something else. Which is actually one of the unique things about these on-the-spot categories, and in which you're, you know, you've already done all the work, you put it in front of a judge, and they're judging it. In these sort of categories, you know, of course you've practiced beforehand, but the actual entry is happening right then and now, and you know, you have to be, and you have to practice this. What happens if I forget? What happens if I completely mess up? What do I do in that situation? Because you never want to be in that spot where you're like, "Sorry, judges, I forgot. Give me a second." Because that both from an inside perspective and an outside being a judge ruins it.
Yes.
Completely
Absolutely.
ruins it.
Yeah, you never want to break your character, because it's when you build this whole thing and you're drawing in your audience, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, no, crap, yeah, no, fuck, right. You've lost all that momentum. You're building something, and then you just cut it short. If you forget something, stay in character, take a pause if you have to, but don't go, right? Like, if you show with your physicality, if you verbally say, oops, if you're, oh, I forgot, it's going to hurt you. On top of that, a lot of people will practice by themselves, and they will go over their thing, and they will think, I've got this, there's no way I'm going to forget. And then once they go in front of somebody, it goes out the window. And what that is adrenaline and fear. And there will always be adrenaline when you're performing this in front of somebody. So the best thing I can tell you is when you're practicing, find a group of friends, practice in front of an audience. Don't go into your tournament and do it the first time in front of a crowd then. Do it beforehand, because you are going to feel things that you cannot prepare for. You're going to, I can instantly tell you, you will speed up your speech. You'll be excited, and you will rush through what you're saying. Slow down, take a moment, know that you're going to start rushing just because of adrenaline, and don't be afraid. I mean, it sounds crazy, but if you go in there thinking, oh my god, I'm going to screw up, you're going to psych yourself out. Go in there with the attitude of, I'm going to have fun with this. I'm going to go and enjoy this. I'm going to present a character and be a different person and just go with it. Your audience doesn't want to see you fail. They want to see you succeed. They don't want to be harsh and cruel to you. They're excited for you. They're super pumped that you're willing to present something for them. Don't go into it thinking that they're the enemy and that they're going to tear you a new one. They want to see you succeed. So just go out there and have fun and entertain them.
Okay. I think we're going to kind of move on to the next question. I've got two more. This next one is kind of a combination of a couple of questions that were asked, but it's all kind of leading into the same subject. People are really concerned about how to ensure that judging is fair, unbiased, and based on the entry and not the person.
So I feel like that's been a thing that I've always wanted to guard against, but I honestly don't know how to. And I don't know if anybody else here has had or formulated a way to guard against it, but
you can always do a couple of things, like not put all your stuff on the same table, and you can have judges recuse themselves if they are related to or married to the person who's entering. And you need to have base judging sheets that are signed in on, that are separate from the comment cards, so that you don't have that person's only piece of paper in front of you. Yeah. It also helps to make people type stuff up, because then you can't recognize their handwriting or their style of speech.
Yeah.
I think that you can try and implement as many things as possible, like everything that Kristen said, because I've done all of those things. You can ask to that out, but Twinkie. You can ask people to not judge a piece if they feel they're going to be biased, but unfortunately, you can't kind of take out the fact that we're all human and shit happens. You're never going to have that 100% unbiased judging. Unfortunately, because we're human, it's going to happen.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Amy.
Okay. I think it's so hard, because I mean, like, particularly for somebody who does 3 bardic entries per thing normally, how do I hide that I'm entering, right? You are literally standing in front of the judges. There's no way to be like, so I'm anonymous. Like, it's hard to have a whole competition where it's anonymous for everybody else, but if you perform, you're screwed. So I honestly don't know how it's possible. And not only that, but then there's also, if you're known for that thing that you do, like, I mean, I do toothpick art, right? How many other people are going to see a thing of toothpick art and be like, oh, well, it could be anyone else? You know, it's really hard to hide people, I would say.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt. Sorry.
I don't know how, and I wish I did. But I don't.
It's just one of the unfortunate things.
You have things that are, you're literally standing there in front of a judge. I mean, if you're modeling garb, right? It's hard. It's very, very hard, and I would love to know if somebody has a way around that, but I think it's weird, where it's kind of half and half. Half the people will be known to the judges and half won't.
Do you feel, aside from Bardics, obviously, which there's really no way to be anonymous, do you feel that it's a situation where, say, a separate registrar for your competitions, as opposed to your judges being present when items are turned in, things like that? If you have
I've done
the electronic submissions, things like that.
I've done the separate registrar. In fact, I did it when I ran Keep ANS a couple years last year. I was pregnant, but you're still going to have those judges that you've seen this person's work so many times that you know it really, really well. And they're not always going to be able to, like, sit out, or they just won't pull themselves out from judging. So even if you have that separate registrar, some people's work, it's pretty easy to pick out of a bunch.
And that definitely...
I'm not suggesting it's a perfect system by any means. Just, do you feel like that's something that helped?
I think that it helped. I don't like the idea of people putting their names on anything in general. I think that it should try and be as anonymous as possible, but I don't, what the person is, the original question, I don't think that we're going to ever have a perfect system, and that's just unfortunate. It's just the way things are, though.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's, oh, Kristen's talking now, but we can't hear her.
Oh, no. Nexus, you look so angry about it.
I'm not angry, I'm just sad. We can't hear her dulcet tones.
Okay, we're almost done, so.
Are we going to try and be able to hear Kristen?
Well, I'm waiting for her. I can't... I pine for her.
Take the Twinkie off the mic.
Maybe we just keep making the thing game.
Maybe it'll do the opposite.
Oh, we're
Everybody
doing
mime into the camera. Do your best mime.
I'm totally
If we all
screwed.
just focus really, really hard, maybe her mic will work.
Can you do ancient Greek? I'll understand that.
All right, next question.
Okay.
Oh, wait, no.
So,
Can I go back to that, though?
oh, did we lose her altogether?
No.
Oh, maybe she was saying goodnight.
I think she's trying to re-enter chat to fix it.
Hi, Karen.
Okay. So, there's one more question.
Okay.
And the last one was, why does everyone hate writing and photography entries so much?
I can answer the writing entries.
Yeah, the written entries, I think that's a pretty self-explanatory one.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Written entries are so often written without a beta, without someone who is going to be brutal to your writing and tell you all the things that you need to know before you let someone else set eyes on it. It's like there are a lot of entries you can get away with doing the night before. A written entry is not one of them.
Bad grammar is bad.
Especially where like maybe you got away with it in school because your professor had no choice but to read it. But in this particular situation, the cardinal sin really is to bore or confuse your reader more so than when you're writing in school, and that's the only experience most people have with writing. So they're not used to having to keep someone's attention.
Yeah.
And so they don't bother.
It's at least, at the very least, in terms of ground walls, they're easy entries. They're one of those things where, did I submit a write-in entry? Yes, you did. Oh, okay, then it passes. Did I submit a photo? Yes, you did. Oh, it passes. But those two particular categories, for as long as I've been judging, when I know that I'm coming up against them, I cringe. I actively cringe because there have been so many times that I faced entries like that, and I've been like, this is really, really awful. When I look at all of the other entries, there's so many opportunities for them to actually relate to Amtgard. And I've been a part of this where the first time I ever entered anything, like a month after I entered Amtgard was Dragon Master, and I entered. I was in like black and white photography in high school, and I entered this like hand developed thing, which was like a picture of me and my Converses, and it was like spot colored and everything, and I thought it was really impressive. But when I entered it, it got a terrible score for a very specific reason. It had nothing to do with our game whatsoever. And I think a lot of people get dragged into this, or like, ooh, I took a really edgy, very well produced photo of whatever, but it has nothing to do with our game. And not only that, but the technique itself. Photography is definitely, in and of itself, has nothing to do with the time period of our game. And writing also, I've seen a lot of research papers, I've seen a lot of stories, so on and so forth, but it's a mixture of bad grammar and bad storytelling.
Those are two separate things.
And just, they definitely are, but there's those two categories, though.
They are both problematic categories, and I agree with you, but to say that photography doesn't contribute to Amtgard, or is part of Amtgard, I would say is incorrect. You can't.
No, I think that category can be, a different part of Amtgard, and I've seen several entries that have been.
I do agree that it needs to be Amtgard related, and I agree that there's a lack of emphasis on people producing things that are beneficial to the game, or a part of the game, or a part and parcel. And I think that photography can be a really big part of Amtgard and should be encouraged, but we shouldn't encourage photography subjects which are not related to the game. But we don't necessarily have that as a guideline in arts and sciences, at least in most places. Most people can pick up any random craft they have and throw it at the game and expect someone to judge it.
I think that photography, I have judged some amazing Amtgard-related photography pieces, and I've also judged a picture of someone's cat in the bathtub. Don't enter your cat in a bathtub. Like,
I see that.
Just send that to me. I love cats.
Okay, that's an interesting point, though. I think that there's an interesting thing that you both brought up, and it bears being focused on, is that we have all of these different crafts that, even if they don't necessarily focus on our game, still relate to our game. I mean, if you made a garb, something in terms of garb that was, related to something that was totally outside of our genre, it's still sort of replicating our time period in terms of construction. And when we get into things like photography, we're presented with a double challenge, because not only are we viewing it sort of in a biased manner as, oh, this is a thing that didn't exist during our time period, we're looking at that, but then we're also looking at the subject matter itself. So
what I'm saying is that we shouldn't think of stuff as this is not included in our time period, because we're a fantasy game. And we include all kinds of crafts that aren't included in that time period, not the SCA. So you can't say this craft wasn't included in our time period. It is part of Amtgard, and if it is an Amtgard subject, it shouldn't have any negatives to it.
I think also there's a lot of misinformation when it comes to what photography is. Some people think that it's literally click, print, and whatever happened to be in that, it's printed, it's done. I mean, you'll have somebody who will take 1,000 pictures and print one of them. That will spend 4 hours editing and coloring and different techniques. They're gonna pose certain things in certain angles. They're gonna take motion photography. There's a lot that goes into it that a lot of people don't know, and sometimes
the entrants themselves don't know, to where they will literally be like, oh, I need an entry. Okay, you're holding a sword. Click. Print it. And that's, maybe not the best way to, when you enter something, you want to do something that you're putting time and effort into, right? If you take the time to edit, if you take the time to get the right shots, the right angles, the proper coloring, or do some type of artistic type of thing, that will be reflected in your score. And also, don't assume that your judges know any of that. If you spend X hours editing and you specifically angled your shot in a way to show this character in dominance over this one, showing, explain it in your write-up. Don't just assume that your judges will know that you spent all this time doing all this coloring, or you chose angles for specific reasons, or that you took 1,000 shots before you picked it. I think education is the key to any of those type of entries. Written also. Some people honestly don't know what makes a good essay or poem or whatever, right? If you're doing poetry, know your rules. Don't break the rules of poetry, right? If it's free verse, let them know it's free verse. Because I've seen somebody who did free verse, and it was a beautiful poem, and somebody made a comment on it, was like, what didn't rhyme. So I'm marking you off.
I think we've kind of established that with written entries, we usually want to attack the heck out of them with red pen. And for photography, we're just looking for somehow related to the game, not necessarily time period, because I 100% agree with you, Kristen, but not a cat photo. I think we've established those things, so we can probably move on to the next question easily.
Okay, that's fair enough. Okay.
Sorry, you guys caught me with a pin in my mouth here. That was actually all of the questions that were posted to me ahead of time. There are a couple people on the call that are not on the panel. Did any of you have any questions? Anything else you wanted to see addressed?
Bueller?
You know what? I actually, I think that would be interesting, because we are formed of a plethora of Amtgarders from, I presume, all across the U.S. Because I don't know where everyone is, and Canada.
And Canada.
Canada doesn't count.
Does it still count if it's an American expat?
That's why it doesn't
Born in the
count.
States.
She's American.
Count.
Whatever. Okay, so America and Canada. A little bit of Canada. I think what would be an interesting question is that, what is everyone's favorite aspect of ANS in Amtgard?
Ooh, good question.
Not even specifically entering tourneys, but the actual process of being involved in ANS itself.
Okay.
Are we going to start with Nexus because he's on Amber's left?
I just asked the question. Why do I have to?
He asked the question. We'll start on the other side. Amy, you're on the other end.
Okay. It's funny. You asked me the same question a couple of years ago, I would have given you a completely different answer. Where I am now in the game, I am so focused on teaching and mentoring and sharing my knowledge and my craft and just trying to support it. But at the same time, I'm literally working on 2 crafts right now as we're speaking, right? I think the passion for creation is huge. Wanting to improve in learning and teaching and all of that, I think is
I think it's a beautiful thing, really. Not just in aesthetics, really. I don't know. It's weird. For me personally, it's something a little bit different from others. For most of you guys know, I suffer with chronic pain and illness. Crafting for me is my coping mechanism. It is my way to focus pain into beauty. It is a distraction and it is a passion. It is the one thing that I can do that, you know, other aspects of the game I physically can't do anymore. This is the one thing that I do and that I love, and it gives me purpose, and it brings me joy. Oh, sorry. I want more than anything to share that. I want others that are in pain and other people who have whatever issues they have in life to have something to turn to like this. Something to throw their time and passion into. And I just want to share that. I want somebody else that is starting this game to know that they can turn to any one of us, and we will teach them everything they ever want to know. That we're here, that we want to teach, that it isn't a bother of our time. It isn't, oh, you're so below us that, you know, we're not going to associate. No, we want this. We want you to ask questions. We want to teach. I mean, that's why we're all here right now doing this panel, is because we want to teach. We want to be there. I think more than anything, come to us. We want to be able to reach out to you guys, and, you know, none of this is secret. None of this is, oh, we're not going to let you know about any of this, right? You will find more teachers than people that want to hide stuff. Never be afraid to ask questions, and never be afraid to try things. The best way to learn something is to screw it up the first time. Every time you try something and you mess it up, you learn from it, and the next time it's going to be better. So just don't be afraid to mess up, enjoy what you're doing, and have fun with it. And if you have questions, ask them. There's no such thing as a stupid question.
Yeah, I think right in the middle there you kind of summed up the whole purpose behind the Arts Academy.
That's it. Next.
Okay. Did anybody else have any more questions they wanted to ask on the panel, off the panel? No? Feeler? Okay.
I think other than, like, you know, just throwing out there the same thing that, you know, Amy was implying or saying, is that you just need to sort of go for it and do it and
do all the things.
Yeah, love what you do, and, you know, do what you love, and, you know, just be a crafter. Just do it. Like Sprite. Or 7-Up. I can't remember.
I don't even know.
Well, then,
I think it's Nike.
Or Nike. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm
one of
pretty
those
sure it's Nike there, babe.
And Shia LaBeouf. And that one.
And Shia LaBeouf.
And Shia LaBeouf.
Stop it.
Do it.
The actual cannibal.
Just stop it, because the next step is John Cena, and we're stopping there.
Okay.
No.
And before we get to John Cena, I think we'll go ahead and call it there. I want to thank everybody for taking 2 hours out of their night to either come and be on the panel or come and listen to the panel, or if you're watching this later, to take the time to watch the video and try to work harder and improve. If you have any questions, anybody, you can come to, I think, any one of us. We like stalkers. We're cool like that. And I'll stop the broadcast there.
All right.